Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Veterinary Business Podcast, where passion meets purpose and where we uncover the stories, strategies, and shifts shaping the future of veterinary medicine. I'm Che, your co-host, and I'm so glad you are here with us today. If you have spent years really mastering a specialized profession, it's more than just a job. It becomes a part of your identity. But what happens when that starts to shift? When your path begins to move away from that traditional role you trained so hard for? Suddenly you are being asked to redefine what success even looks like. And honestly, that feeling is more common than we think. So what we're doing here is unpacking that journey, the one that goes beyond the exam room. We are exploring not just challenges, but the opportunities that comes when veterinary professionals start blending things like technology, leadership, and crucially mental health awareness into their careers. And we are also asking, how do you hold on to that core sense of purpose even when your role evolves? Maybe from being the hands-on expert to becoming more of a strategic leader or even an innovator in the field. So that's exactly what today's episode is all about. We're joined by someone who really embodies that kind of evolution, Dr. Mark Masaro. He was the PIMS director at Vet Medicaid, and now he is the founder and the moderator of Non-Clinical Vet Med Careers. Dr. Masaro, we're so excited to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, before we dive in, here's a special gift for our listeners. You can book a complimentary practice growth strategy session with Laila, a veteran in veterinary marketing with decades of experience. During the session, you'll receive an in-depth analysis of your practice's online presence, plus a personalized 6-month growth plan to help your clinic thrive and strengthen its connection with your community. So it's a way of saying thank you because veterinarians give so much to their patients, their teams, and their profession. So this one's for you. Dr. Masaro, let's start right at the heart of your story. You've navigated an inspiring journey from hands-on clinical practice to leadership roles in veterinary technology, education, and advocacy. That's quite a shift. So what initially sparked that transition for you, and how did you come to find a renewed sense of purpose beyond the exam room?
Yeah. So, I guess I could talk about that. One question could be the whole podcast, but for me, and you mentioned about mental health earlier, for me, it really all came down to mental health. I spent my entire life in veterinary medicine. My parents are veterinarians. My older brother's a veterinarian. I grew up in the clinic. My only dream, my only goal my entire life was to become a veterinarian and take over the family business. But I really struggled severely with imposter syndrome and anxiety to the point where I was actually throwing up all the time. I had like a stress-induced vomiting, kind of like I joke, kind of like a cat. Like in veterinary medicine, we talk about cats that have IBD or have small cell lymphoma. If they get stressed, they'll vomit. That is what was happening to me. And it got to the point where mentally, physically, I just couldn't handle being the doctor on the case and everyone looking to me to have the answers and second guessing every single clinical decision I was making. But I was always skilled with technology. Every single practice I've ever worked at as a technician, as an assistant, as a veterinarian, I was always the guy that everybody went to if they had questions about how to use the medical record software. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that could potentially be, maybe somebody would be interested in paying me to do that because I do it anyway. And I've had a lot of jobs over the years, but essentially all of them have been around this concept of being an expert in PIMS or practice management software. And like you said, being kind of the behind the scenes guy, the strategic guy, building out procedure bundles, building out discharge templates, exam templates, all that kind of thing. Nowadays, everything's about AI. So I do a lot of consulting on how to best use AI in your clinic. So one of the things I really struggled with was writing my records and being very anal retentive about my records. They had to be perfect. Every single thing I had to have perfectly written down about what happened during that visit, every single differential. What if I missed a differential? And I didn't have AI when I was practicing. I missed it by a couple years. But now I can see the huge benefit to that, and not just AI, but just some of these different software tools in general. And so I'm kind of helping another version of myself, helping these veterinarians that are struggling with the same things I'm struggling with. It doesn't make them throw up every day, but if it's going to help them get home on time earlier, get their paperwork done faster, have a little bit more support in terms of possible differentials, possible treatment plans, that's kind of my big passion right now. More, like you said, more strategic, behind the scenes, technology focused.
All right. Really appreciate you being very honest with our audience today, because there must be people listening to this podcast who are going through the same issues, right? But the barrier is many veterinarians feel a deep sense of identity tied to their clinical work, right? So when they consider stepping away, like how you did, even temporarily, it can feel like they're stepping away from being a veterinarian altogether, right? So in your view, how can the profession begin to redefine what it truly means to be a veterinarian today, especially in a world where the roles are expanding?
Yeah, this is something I'm also super passionate. I've had really interesting conversations with different folks on LinkedIn about this topic, specifically about, and I'm guilty of this myself as well. I have said out loud, I used to be a veterinarian. I'll catch myself and say, no, I am a veterinarian, even though I'm not currently practicing. I'm helping the profession in a different way. And this is kind of relates to the non-clinical vet med careers. That's my passion project of being aware that you can be a veterinarian, you can be a veterinary technician, but not necessarily be on the floor in the clinic. There's other roles out there. There's software support, there's marketing, there's sales, there's recruiting, but we don't want to discount that clinical experience that you had, that you still are, that's still part of your identity. And I definitely really struggled with, who am I as a person if I'm not? I spent my entire life working towards one goal. And so, like you said, when I decided to stop practicing, or was kind of forced to by my own body in a way, I really did struggle with that identity. So I do think we as a profession, overall, I was super nervous about it and what people were going to say and how they were going to react. Overall, when I've had individual conversations with people, everyone has been super gracious, super accepting. But I've also talked to people that also felt that fear, that stigma of, I don't know if I can say I'm a veterinarian because I'm working in software. But so I think it's kind of just one of those things, the more we talk about it, the more normal it will be. And we as a profession, we should want people in those roles. Because one of the things I come across all the time is people complaining about the program, how annoying their program is, and it doesn't work the way they want it to work. And the phrase that people will say is like, God, it feels like there was no veterinarians in the room when they developed this program. And so and I'm like, well, there might not have been. There probably wasn't in a lot of these cases. So we should want veterinarians, veterinary technicians, practice managers in the room when these tools are being developed. But no, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of that identity struggle and what does it really mean to be a veterinarian? I'm fine with if you say out loud, I'm a veterinarian, everyone's brain is going to immediately go to, I work in a clinic. And I think that is what the word means. But I do think within the profession, not that I think anyone's actively doing anything to create this stigma, but again, just talking about it more, having it be more out there, especially for people that are struggling with this. I'm not doing well in the clinic. I'm struggling with being in the clinic, but I can't even imagine what else I could possibly do. Having more resources, and again, this is why I started NCVC. But even in vet school, like we were all so tunnel vision to that we are going to be veterinarians. And they mentioned it in a couple lectures here and there about, oh, look at all these other things you can do with your degree. But we were all like, we had a handful of students that wanted to go into government or industry or whatever it was. But I think we need to do a better job of really explaining what else is out there and what other things you can do in your career, not just for the students that know that they want to go into industry during vet school, but those students like me that were totally convinced they were going to be clinical and then find themselves a few years out like, ooh, this isn't working, so that they have the tools to navigate that.
I think, Doctor, you made a good point there, saying that your body forced you to choose a different path, right? Because we cannot compromise our well-being or our mental health, thinking about a identity or stigma or what other people think about us, right? We need to prioritize our well-being, our health. So that brings us to a really important intersection in your work, where tech meets well-being. So you're deeply involved in both mental health advocacy through LinkedIn and in software efficiency with Wet Medicate. So those might seem like separate worlds, but they clearly connect in your mission. So how do you see technology either supporting or sometimes even challenging the mental health and well-being of veterinary professionals?
Yeah, no, I think, and this is something we've kind of like touched on a little bit already, is I think those are super connected. Now, people might say exactly what you're saying. How does software and mental health, what do those really have to do with each other? But I think a big part of the mental health struggles that a lot of people have in veterinary medicine is, one, the amount of paperwork that we do. You get through a shift of appointments, and depending on how busy your shift was, especially if you're an emergency doctor or a really busy GP or a surgeon, it doesn't matter. If you're going from appointment to appointment, and you don't necessarily have time to write all your notes in between, you get to the end of the day and you have a pile of charts. So we used to say a pile of charts because we used to literally have a physical stack of charts. Now we just have, a whole list of records in our system that we need to go back and fill out. And that can feel daunting. And I don't remember necessarily everything we talked about 6, 8, 12 hours ago in my first appointment of the day. And you're trying to scribble down little notes on your notepad in between appointments. And so that mental load, I think definitely contributes to burnout in our field. And so having these software tools now, again, we talked about AI is all the rage these days. I mean, AI has completely revolutionized this problem. The fact that you can have these ambient listening programs that are summarized and that you can use templates to make it sound like you. I mean, but even before AI, what I was doing for years was, and again, I did this at every clinic I ever worked at, was every PIMS had the ability to make templates, make exam templates, make discharge templates, where I could say, pull up my limping template, pull up my vomiting template, and I would have it 80, 90% written. And I just had to like fill in the specifics about my specific case, saving, even if it's only saving 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes on each appointment. If you're seeing 15 appointments and you're saving 10 minutes on each appointment, you just saved yourself a couple hours worth of work. And again, now AI has completely revolutionized this. But then on the other hand, with things like imposter syndrome. So, I was the guy, I would see a case. It could be a relatively straightforward case with a coughing dog, for instance, or a vomiting dog, but your list of differentials could be really long. And maybe the client wants to do diagnostics. Maybe they don't. Maybe the blood work comes back totally normal. The chest x-rays come back totally normal. And you're like, I don't know why this dog's still coughing or not eating or vomiting, or this cat or whatever it is. And I would go home and take out my textbooks from veterinary school, or I would go on VIN, the message boards. If anyone's listening to this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and just go down these crazy rabbit holes to try to figure out what was going on with my patients and different treatment possibilities, different diagnostics I could be doing. And again, AI has completely revolutionized this, where it can sift through all these materials super fast for us. Reading referral records is another thing. You get this 150-page record for this person who just moved, or if you're a boarded surgeon or a boarded internal medicine specialist, they get crazy records, internal medicine specialists. I was an intern and I was in veterinary school seeing these records that these specialists would have to read through and sift through and try to find these nuggets of information. Again, having AI read these for us, summarize these for us. And again, even if it's not AI, just better using the different technology, different tools we have, different resources, to sift through this massive, massive amount of information. I joke with my parents. My parents graduated in 1986, and not that it wasn't extremely hard to be a veterinarian in 1986, but the amount of information that we have now that we're supposed to be responsible for just knowing everything between Cushing's and inappropriate urination and puppy train, like it's near impossible now. Our clients, reasonably so, when you go to the vet, you expect the vet to have the answers, but I don't think people necessarily realize there's multiple different species and just the amount of different problems that we have to be well versed in. It can be super, super helpful to have different software tools, AI tools at your disposal to help with that process. So yeah, I'm rambling, but I'm very passionate about the intersection between mental health and technology for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense, doctor, because if you use the technology or the tools or whatever around you properly, that can make your life easy and that can enhance client experience as well. So you clearly mentioned that. I think that was super helpful for our listeners. So now, for those listening who might be contemplating a shift into non-clinical roles, whether it's in tech or education or consultancy, the leap can feel daunting, right? What mindset shifts or core skills do you believe are essential to make that kind of move successfully and sustainably?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I preach here is getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. I talked to a lot of people. I just literally had a call last week where I talked to somebody who said, and actually I've also had people say, I'm not going to apply for this job or that job because I don't feel like I'm qualified. This person had applied to 300 jobs. And I said, yeah, but how many networking calls have you done? How many people have you just kind of sent them a message on LinkedIn or emailed the company or whatever and just said, hey, I'm super interested in what your company is doing. I want to learn more. Even if they're not hiring, I just want to learn more about you as a person and how you got to be where you are today. And I asked this question to a lot of people, actually, and almost always they say, yeah, no, none. And then like that's a problem. And I think especially in today's job market, when they're posting these jobs. I see these jobs get posted on LinkedIn because I repost them. And within 24 hours, they have over 100 applicants. How many of those are real people or bots? I have no idea. But to get noticed in this sea of applicants now in these AI applicant tracking systems that are just looking for keywords or whatever it is, networking, I think, is a really underutilized, underemphasized skill to break into this industry and break into this space. Find out other people that have done it before you, people like me, and I've met a couple dozen of us on LinkedIn that have been super gracious with their time to get to know me, and I will send them to other people and say, hey, can you chat to this person about how they made the transition? But also just people in that space, sales, marketing, recruiting, software, whatever it is, pharmaceuticals. Get to know who are the major players in that space and form relationships with them. One of my favorite things to do is to go to a conference and walk down the hall of the conference and stop at a booth or even just pass people in the hallway and go, hey, Holly, Stephanie, I know you from LinkedIn. I see your post. And people do that to me as well. Mark, you're the LinkedIn guy. You're that guy who posts all those jobs. And starting to form those relationships. I'm not saying don't go crazy applying to 300 jobs. Absolutely still do that. I think that's great. But I think we need to also do networking and people work, to just get to know the people in the space.
All right, a great tip. First, get into your comfort zone and then build connections, make that network and get the advantage from those connections. All right, final thoughts, Doctor. As we look ahead with all these evolving roles, new technologies, and a growing awareness of mental health, how do you envision technology, empathy, and education coming together to build a more sustainable, fulfilling future for veterinary professionals?
One thing I just want to say to the previous question that I should have mentioned, my first thing I tell people to do is to join my page. The reason I made the page is because there was nothing out there that fit this need that I felt was doing what I wanted it to do. So this NCVC group. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, make a LinkedIn. It's free. You don't have to post ever. You can literally just join my group and scroll through. But I have 4 different pages under this banner of NCVC, non-clinical veterinary careers. The job page, where there's literally hundreds of different jobs posted. You can just scroll through. A networking page where I have hundreds of profiles. You can scroll through and reach out to these people. There's an IT software page if you're more looking for those types of roles. And there's an open to work page where if you are looking for a job, you can post on the open to work page, and there are recruiters that will scroll that page. I have a lot of people ask me, well, are there any recruiters that specifically help people find non-clinical jobs? I don't know of any. I know there's some like in the UK, but in the US, I don't know of any recruiters that specifically help people with this transition. And again, I have yet to see another group or another page that consistently posts these roles and posts these profiles. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, make one, join the group, non-clinical veterinary careers or non-clinical vet med careers. I changed it because I wanted to sound more inclusive because I had veterinary technicians saying, what about us? I said, okay, so non-clinical vet med careers. So definitely join the group. But what do I see for the future is that I don't have to create a group on LinkedIn because there's nothing out there. And I don't have to have one lecture during my 3rd year of veterinary school that like barely touched on this, right? I think it's really important to start early and often. I actually had a really awesome opportunity where I was advising the AI company that we're using at VetMeducate. I became an advisor for them, and I actually helped connect them with my veterinary school, Cornell. And Cornell ended up implementing AI, and I got to go back to my vet school 5 years later and help with that process. And I've heard from other veterinary schools, friends from other veterinary schools that say my school is totally opposed to AI. And I completely understand their perspective that, we need our students to learn how to write a SOAP note, that's really important. And it's one of the things I talk to the people at Cornell about. It's a 2-week rotation. Maybe the first week the students have to write their own SOAPs. The second week they're allowed to use AI and proofread and edit. But the future is not us as veterinarians, veterinary technicians, practice managers, sitting down and typing out our histories, our physicals, our assessments, our plans from memory. That is not the future. And that's not even really what's happening right now. If you look at how it's taken off, learning how to use these tools and being open to learning how to use these tools. And you talked about the intersection and being open about mental health. Again, we talked about this identity crisis thing. One of the things I think we need to just do a better job about, and it is getting significantly better over the last few years, but it wasn't like this 10 years ago. Anybody in the field can attest. It was very hush-hush about mental health and veterinary medicine. And if you talk to anybody who wasn't in the field, they had no idea. That still happens quite a bit. If you say to somebody, oh yeah, no, veterinarians have one of the highest suicide rates of any profession. We have one of the highest rates of mental illness of any profession, of mental stress and burnout. They're like, really? I had no idea. I just figured you got to see puppies and kittens all day. Like, what an amazing job. And then they immediately go to, oh, it's because you euthanize animals. And I always say, now for some, that is a real struggle. I always say, the euthanasia part for me was not part of it at all. It was the imposter syndrome and the anxiety and the decision fatigue. But being more open to technology, using it early and often, being more open to talking about identity and mental health and the struggles, and also, again, engaging the public in these discussions. Not just, I love that we're being more open and honest about these topics within the veterinary community, but one of our big stressors is dealing with clients, right? And client expectations. And I think there is a lot of times a breakdown between clients not really understanding what's going on behind the scenes and how difficult it is. Our patients can't talk to us. They can't tell us where it hurts. There's a famous book, Tell Me Where It Hurts, written by a veterinarian. But yeah, bringing our clients into our world a bit more so they can understand. I've done this myself, and I've had friends that do this, and really kind of being very honest with clients about how difficult some of these cases are, and them saying, oh my God, I had no idea, I didn't realize. And them being a lot more understanding of us not having the answers all the time, or why the diagnostics cost as much as they do, and why didn't I get an answer about whether or not your dog has cancer on a CBC chemistry? Why do I now need an ultrasound? There's so many examples, and again, I'm doing like a long rambling answer, but the question was also pretty broad, right? Like, what's the future of the intersection of mental health technology and veterinary medicine? There's a million things I could talk about here, but I think just listening to myself, the biggest thing is just awareness, talking about these things more, making these tools more open to people in the field, and again, bringing the public into these discussions as well.
Wow. You are requesting our listeners to be open to technology, be open to learning them, and be open about mental health. And at the same time, I love how you have gone above and beyond to support the community, right? To be open and to educate the community and make them comfortable in this industry. And I feel super grateful to have you here today for this episode to share this support, right? What a fantastic conversation. What really came through for me was this idea that stepping beyond the exam room doesn't mean stepping away from your purpose, right? If anything, you've shown how that move can actually deepen your impact, whether it's through tech, mental health advocacy, or coaching others through the same kind of transition. And I think lots of vets needs to hear that being a veterinarian today is not one size fits all. It's not just about clinical work, right?
I like that phrase. Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Right? It can also mean being a leader, being a builder, a guide, or even an innovator in spaces where we didn't imagine when we first started, right? That's what happens with your story as well. So, Dr. Masaro, thank you for sharing your journey and insights with us today. So to our listeners, we hope today's discussion inspired you to reflect on your own path, whether it's exploring new directions, embracing new technology, or simply finding a better balance between work and well-being. And if you are inspired to take that reflection a step further, don't forget that there's this marketing strategy meeting worth $900 waiting for you. That's a gift from the sponsor. You can book the meeting at veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM, where you'll meet with our marketing expert, Laila, who brings decades of experience helping veterinary practices grow and connect with their communities. So you'll also find the link and more details in the episode notes. So thank you for tuning in to Veterinary Business Podcast, where passion meets purpose. Until next time, take care of yourself, your team, and that incredible spark that keeps you making difference every day. See you all at the next episode.